I used to believe love was an inefficient emotion. That was the conclusion I reached after 8 years in deep space xenolinguistics, 5 first contact missions, and 1 near-death incident involving a sentient nebula that objected, politely but firmly, to being observed. Love, I thought, was a chemical misfire, a biological relic, something evolution forgot to clean up once intelligence took over. The galaxy, after all, didn't run on love. It ran on treaties, trade routes, star lanes, power balances, and carefully calculated compromises. It ran on survival. And then I met her. Her name was Elira Vostel, though among her people, names were layered things, tones, colors, ancestral echoes, far richer than anything human throats could pronounce. Elira was the closest approximation our translators could manage without overheating. She was not human. She was not fragile. And she was not supposed to choose me. The beginning, a meeting that wasn't meant to matter. The first time I saw Elira, she was standing at the center of the Concord Spire, a floating council chamber suspended above the neutral world of Kepra 9. Light bent strangely there, refracting through quantum glass and atmospheric fields designed to accommodate species that breathed ammonia, light, liquid methane, or nothing at all. Elira stood out anyway. Her people, the Telari, were known across the galaxy for their elegance and precision. Tall, bioluminescent patterns tracing faint constellations across their skin. Eyes like polished obsidian, reflecting more than they revealed. Their voices carried harmonic undertones that bypassed language and went straight into the nervous system. Most species found them unsettling. I found her fascinating. She was the Telari High Emissary to the Galactic Accord, one of the youngest ever appointed. Politically untouchable, strategically priceless, and utterly out of my league. I was just Dr. Elias Cade, human specialist, brought in to help translate subtle emotional subtext between the Telari and a coalition of species who didn't understand why the Telari found deception offensive on a genetic level. Our first conversation was professional.
Dry.
Polite. You interpret emotional variance well for a species that lies recreationally, she said, her translator smoothing the edge off what I suspected was meant to be an insult. We prefer the term creative truth-bending, I replied. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed once. Telari amusement. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Over weeks of negotiations, we spoke more. Between sessions. During artificial dusk cycles. About culture. About art. About why humans wrote stories where love destroyed empires instead of stabilizing them. You center narratives on individuals, she observed once. Even when the collective suffers. We believe individuals are where meaning happens, I said. She studied me for a long time after that. Longer than necessary. I didn't know then that among the Telari, prolonged observation was a sign of deep interest. Or that I had already crossed a line neither of us could uncross. The middle, a galaxy that demands sacrifice. The galaxy doesn't like inefficiencies. When rumors began to circulate that the Telari emissary was showing preferential attention to a human advisor, the reaction was swift and merciless. I was summoned to Earth Command. Elira is central to the upcoming Unity Convergence, Admiral Ree told me, her face a carefully neutral mask. The largest political realignment in 2 centuries. If the Telari withdraw, the outer systems fracture. Wars follow. I already knew where this was going. You want me reassigned? I said. Immediately. I returned to Kepra 9 to find Elira waiting for me in the observation garden, a space engineered to simulate open sky for species who needed it. Her markings were dimmer than usual. They will ask you to leave, she said quietly. They already did. Silence stretched between us. Heavy.
Charged.
If I sever personal association, she continued, the Accord stabilizes. If I do not, the Tellari Council may recall me. And if you're recalled, I asked, what happens? I lose my position, my influence, my life as I know it. I force myself to nod. This was the rational outcome, the correct one. We knew this was temporary, I said. She stepped closer, close enough that the translator struggled to keep up with the layered emotion in her voice. No, she said. You assumed it was. That was the moment everything changed. Over the next cycles, the pressure mounted. Other emissaries began treating me like a liability. Security protocols shifted. Whispers followed us through corridors. And yet, Alira did not withdraw. Instead, she invited me into Tellari spaces forbidden to outsiders. Shared memories encoded in light. Showed me how her people perceived time, not as a line, but as a tapestry where choices echoed backward as much as forward. You alter my probability field, she admitted one night. My future paths collapse differently with you present. Is that bad? I asked. For the galaxy? She said softly. Yes. For me? She met my eyes. No. When the Tellari Council formally issued their ultimatum, it was broadcast across the Accord. Choose. The galaxy held its breath. The choice, love versus everything else, the Convergence Assembly, was the largest gathering I had ever seen. Thousands of species represented physically, holographically, mathematically. The stakes were clear: unity or collapse. Alira stood alone at the center dais. I was not supposed to be there. Security had tried to stop me. Failed. Humans have a reputation for persistence bordering on recklessness. The Tellari Council's voice resonated through the chamber. Emissary Alira Vostel, your attachment has compromised strategic objectivity. Renounce it and retain your role. Or persist and be recalled in disgrace. I watched her glow brighten, Tellari emotional amplification visible to all. I have analyzed every projection, she said. In 97%, I choose the galaxy. Stability is preserved. Lives are saved. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. And in the remaining 3%, the council asked. She turned then, looked directly at me. In the remaining 3%, she said, I choose him. And the galaxy must learn something new. Shock echoed across 1,000 cultures. You would risk everything for one human? Another emissary demanded. No, Alira replied calmly. I would redefine everything for one connection. She stepped down from the dais. Toward me. I was taught that love was a flaw, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. That it narrowed perspective. That it endangered the collective. She reached for my hand. Tellari skin was warm. Alive. But you showed me that love does not subtract from meaning, she continued. It concentrates it. The council declared her recalled. Sanctions were announced. Shockwaves began propagating through the Accord. And yet, something unexpected happened. Species after species hesitated. Treaties weren't torn up. Fleets didn't mobilize. Instead, questions were asked. If a civilization as calculated as the Tellari could value one being over certainty, what did that say about the nature of progress? The galaxy didn't collapse. It paused. The ending. Understanding love, at last we left Kepra, 9 quietly. Alira was no longer emissary. I was no longer an advisor. We became something far rarer. Free. We settled on a fringe world, one with open skies and unstable politics and room to breathe. I returned to teaching. She became a cultural architect, helping worlds adapt to change rather than fear it. Years passed. The galaxy adjusted. The Accord didn't shatter, it evolved. Smaller alliances formed. Power decentralized. The Tellari, surprisingly, thrived outside rigid hierarchy. Alira's mistake became a case study in adaptive ethics. One evening, as twin suns dipped below the horizon, I asked her the question that had haunted me since the convergence. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "Choosing me over everything?" She considered this, her markings pulsing gently in the twilight. "You misunderstand," she said. "I did not choose you over the galaxy." She took my hand, fingers interlacing with mine, a gesture she had learned from humans. "I chose you," she said, "and the galaxy learned to live with that." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "I spent my life thinking love was inefficient," I admitted. She smiled, a subtle shift in expression that still made my heart stumble. "And now," I said, watching the stars emerge, "I finally understand. Love wasn't a weakness. It wasn't a flaw. It was the courage to choose meaning, even when the universe demanded compromise. And sometimes, the bravest thing in the galaxy is choosing one person and letting the stars figure out the rest." We left Kepra, 9 quietly, carrying the weight of a galaxy that had watched and waited. Alira was no longer emissary. I was no longer an advisor. We were simply ourselves, stripped of titles, protocols, and expectations. The fringe world we chose wasn't extraordinary by galactic standards: unstable orbit, thin atmosphere, modest moons, but it had something the galaxy could never provide: space to breathe and to exist without pretense. There, beneath skies painted with twin suns, we discovered something that the most advanced diplomacy or military strategy could never create: a life we shaped together. We built a home from what we could carry, from memories and ideas, and from strange alien flora we coaxed into growth. Alira, who had once carried the weight of interstellar politics on her shoulders, reveled in the small joys: the way light filtered through the windows, the patterns the wind made on the sand, the quiet laughter that didn't need translation. I returned to teaching, though now my lessons weren't just about xenolinguistics. They were about communication, connection, and the subtle power of emotion. The galaxy, as unpredictable as it always had been, began to adjust. The accord didn't collapse. Smaller alliances formed. Planets that had depended on rigid hierarchies learned that collaboration could exist without coercion. The Telari thrived outside their old council system, adapting their culture in ways previously deemed impossible. Alira's mistake had triggered subtle shifts across the stars. For the first time, the galaxy began to understand that one choice could ripple farther than fleets or treaties ever could. Years passed. We explored the fringe worlds, sometimes alone, sometimes with human students or alien scholars who had been inspired by Alira's courage. We laughed. We argued. We discovered the ordinary miracles of everyday existence. And always, we returned to the same question that had followed us since the convergence. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked one evening, as our twin suns dipped into the horizon and the sky turned molten gold. She paused, her markings glowing faintly in the twilight, reflecting the spectrum of emotion her people could never hide. "You misunderstand," she said softly. "I chose you, and the galaxy learned to live with that," she continued, her voice carrying layers of meaning that our old translators would have failed to capture. "I did not abandon the galaxy. I simply found where my heart and our hearts belonged." The weight of it struck me like the first time I saw her standing in the Concord spire, all elegance and light. I had spent my life thinking love was inefficient, a chemical misfire, an evolutionary mistake. And yet here she was, proving with every heartbeat, every choice, every quiet act of courage, that love was not a flaw. It was the force that allowed the universe itself to bend toward something greater. We watched the stars rise above our horizon. Nebulas, distant planets, asteroid belts, all the cold, infinite beauty of space stretched beyond comprehension. And yet, I felt something even more infinite, the gravity of a connection that no treaty, fleet, or council could ever dictate. Alira took my hand, her touch warm, alive, human and alien all at once. "Do you finally understand?" she asked, eyes reflecting twin suns and the first glimmers of emerging stars. "I do," I whispered, feeling the full weight and liberation of that truth. Love isn't weakness. Love isn't inefficiency. Love is courage. The courage to choose meaning in the face of the void. She smiled, not the polite, strategic smile of the Telari diplomat, not the careful, measured smile that balanced billions of lives, but a real smile, one that made my heart stumble and my mind still. "And sometimes," she said, leaning closer so our foreheads touched, "the bravest thing in the galaxy isn't leading fleets, negotiating treaties, or preserving the accord." I looked into her obsidian eyes, glowing softly with the colors of emotion and life. "The bravest thing," she whispered, "is choosing one person and letting the universe figure out the rest." We stood together, watching the twin suns dip behind the horizon. Stars blinked into existence. The galaxy carried on volatile, chaotic, endlessly beautiful. But here, on this small, unremarkable world, we had discovered something that could never be measured by charts or codes. We had each other. And in that moment, for the first time, I understood what all those old stories had been trying to tell me. Love was not a liability. It was not a misfire. It was not an illusion. Love was the force that could bend destinies, inspire revolutions, reshape galaxies, and, in the quiet spaces between suns and stars, it had reshaped me. We did not know what the future would bring. Wars might flare. Alliances might fracture. Empires might rise and fall. But we had discovered a truth the galaxy itself could not ignore, that even amidst infinite stars, vast emptiness, and the cold calculus of survival, one choice could outshine an entire galaxy. And so we stayed, together, against odds, against expectation, against the relentless gravity of reason. Because in choosing each other, we had discovered something infinitely rarer than power, wealth, or conquest. We had discovered love, and in doing so, we finally understood its unmeasurable, unstoppable, irrevocable power. The universe continued, vast and indifferent. But we, just one human and one Telari, were infinite within it. And that was enough.